Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. This is Nishant, and welcome to another episode of the Nishant Garg Show. This show is for people who want to live a fulfilled life through mindfulness practices and personal transformation. My job on this show is to invite world class performers to share the practices to live a fulfilled life. This episode guest is Jessica Zaia, and in this episode, we are going to talk about intuition development, soul calling, healing, and much more. Jessica is an intuitive channel and soul coach at Zaia Soul. After 16 years in corporate sales, she now dedicates her life to bringing grounded intuitive techniques into the modern world. Through Shamanic Soul Journeying, energy work, light language, transmissions, and the Akashic Records, Jessica helps people unearth their soul calling and turn their intuitive gifts into a skill set to support them in fulfilling their soul's purpose. And now let the episode begin. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
You are my first guest from Austin, Texas. We are in the same city. So we are recording this in the morning. It's 8 a.m. So what did you have in the breakfast?
Nothing yet. Well, I'm drinking coffee with oat milk right now.
Coffee with oat milk. You were working in corporate sales for 16 years, and a year ago you completely moved to a full-time soul coaching. Can you elaborate more on that? Why did you do that?
Yes, and it's funny. Today is my 1-year anniversary from leaving corporate. It's May 1st, and I just realized that when we hopped on the call, so I will be celebrating later for sure. But let's see, what's the story there? I was in sales for a long time, different industries. I sold telecom, I sold financial services, I sold all kinds of things. So the last 5 years of my career was in finance, and I was doing business development for a financial firm and was doing very well there despite my lack of tenure in the field, my lack of studying finance. I took all the exams. I was a licensed financial advisor. And during that time, my spiritual awakening started happening about 10 years ago. And then through that process of really looking inside and saying, what are these voices kind of running in my mind? And where did these come from? And what do they mean? And as I started going through that awakening process over the last decade, my intuitive awakening started happening. So as I pursued that, it just got to a point where I'd been doing things behind the scenes for a long time. And it's funny, the story of how I truly came out of the closet, and all of this leads to me leaving corporate. I was at a yoga festival, actually, and I was sitting in a meditation circle with some friends. And anytime anybody would walk by, we would invite them in to kind of sit down in meditation with us. And oh my gosh, I remember like it was yesterday. I turned to the person to my right and just kind of briefly waved my hand to welcome him in. And he physically reacted, and he kind of jolted back and goes, oh my gosh, what was that? And I was so embarrassed. I sat on my hands, and the girl next to him said, oh no, I felt that too. You are clearly an energy worker. If you're not like doing this, take this as a sign that you need to be. And I was still very in the closet. Like I knew I've had gifts my whole life, but it's not something I've advertised. And they got up, and a girl sat down in front of me, almost expectantly, just expecting me to do energy work. And so I kind of did. And it was kind of a mixture of energy work and a reading. And she sat up, and someone else came and sat down. And I looked up, and there was a line of people sitting across the field waiting to have energy work or a reading or whatever it was that I could say that I was doing. And people cried in my arms. People came up to me saying, oh my gosh, chakra, something, energy. My friend just said it was amazing. I'm like, yep, sit down. And that was kind of the universe slapping me in my face and being like, you're doing this. So I did it all day long. And then I was like, okay, fine. I will start doing this. So I started offering it on a donation basis, and one thing led to another, and it turned into intuitive development and soul coaching and healing and things like that. So that just naturally grew while I was still in corporate. And it got to the point that I had to decide, okay, do I cook myself dinner tonight, go to yoga, or take a client? And when it got to the point that I was having to choose between non-negotiables in my life, I was like, something's got to give. I don't have time. I'm ready. So I made that leap, and it's the best thing I've ever done for myself.
There are so many things in this story that I want to ask you, and I want to learn more about that.
Yeah.
So 10 years ago, going back 10 years ago, you mentioned that you had a spiritual awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. I think everyone's spiritual awakening is different, and it's such a cliche, very trendy term right now. And it's trendy because it's happening to a lot of people. It's because we truly are in a mass awakening, and COVID-19 is a catalyst in that. And we can go down that rabbit hole later if you like. But my awakening really started with an eating disorder in college. And I know now, I didn't know at the time, that it was me purging all of the emotional, traumatic energy, everything, especially from my family and my upbringing, that I had carried and absorbed for so long. And I lived alone. This was in college. This was actually at UT in Austin before I moved back to Houston. And I said, this is not right. I realized that something had control over me, and I didn't like that. So I put myself in a position to face my demons, whatever they were. And through that time, that's kind of how I learned to look at, okay, what is this voice in my head telling me to do something that I know is not good for me? And then what's that other voice telling me that I have to do it? Or if I do it, then I'm crazy. Or if I don't do it, it was like, it's very psychological to have these different voices. And I realized, it's our conditioning. It's our inherited beliefs and these emotions that I've carried that were playing out and had developed these personas in my life. And, so again, that was the beginning of my awakening, which is really just looking internally at who am I beneath what the world has taught me to be, or what the world has told me that I am. So that's how it started for me. And it's really close to my heart to be able to walk people through that process in the various offerings that I have, because it's scary and it can be very hard.
Did your parents tell you anything in your life that you have to be in this way?
I was never directly told I had to be anything, but conditioning is rarely direct. I mean, look at the media. They're showing us all day long what we should strive to be, what attractive looks like, what success looks like. It's not, some of the deepest conditioning is very indirect. I was raised with a religious family. So my parents are divorced. We went to church every Sunday. One of my parents was more traditional. She just liked the tradition of it. And then, my dad was more indoctrinated, if you will, but always raised with a positive message. My dad, you can be whoever and whatever you want to be. If you want it, put your mind to it, you can do it. He's the one who taught me about personal development. Like that kind of came from my dad later on. And my mom is kind of how I learned the word intuition. I just kind of that gut feeling. So I wasn't raised with spirituality by any means, but it was also in college around that time, the eating disorder, that I started questioning the religious beliefs and kind of that indoctrination that I was raised with. And that was really scary to say, okay, well, I've been told that I'm going to hell if I don't believe what I'm being told. So it's really scary to not believe.
Do you still believe that?
Oh, I'm not religious at all. I consider religion based off of someone else's experience with the divine, and I consider spirituality a unique personal relationship with the divine. So I have a very deep reverence for and connection with the divine, which is in all of us. We are divine. That is the big illusion, is that we are separate from it. That's, from my perspective, simply untrue. So no, I am not religious whatsoever. I am highly spiritual, highly connected, and that connection guides me.
This connection with the divine spirit is amazing. I absolutely believe in that. And do you think we can explain or define that connection into words or a concept, or it is just something to experience?
Yeah, I'll explain my perspective. I always
Please.
encourage people and all of my clients to have your own experience. Because I'm so aware of how conditioned we are as a society, the way that I learn and grow and develop is based on my own experience. And I wait until I feel pretty solid with my own experience before I seek any external knowledge or reading or information that might validate or support it or kind of fill in any gaps. So I'm going to put that caveat in here. Now, I see energies, kind of the primary lens that I view the world through. And I see source energy, or the I am presence, or God, goddess, the universe, cosmos, whatever label you feel comfortable with that resonates with you, cool, use that. They're all just words. But I see it as light. And this source light, this I am presence, I see as this field of infinite light. And us as souls, I see as filaments of light. And these filaments of light choose to have an experience in whichever dimension they choose to have an experience in whichever environment. We are in this earthly 3D plane, and we choose these human bodies that we want to incarnate into in order to experience what this reality has to offer and what it can teach us and how we can grow and come to know ourselves through the mirror of this experience. Because everything external is simply a mirror of the internal. And that is how we get to know ourselves in this environment. And through this awakening process, it's really a remembrance. It's not learning something new. It's remembering the truth of who you are at your core, that we are a filament of light from the source of all light that is chosen to be here and inhabit these bodies in order to have an experience, to learn certain lessons and grow in certain ways.
Can somebody be evil at the core?
Okay, so that's a big question.
It's a broad question.
Yeah. Okay. So let me check in and see how I am to answer this right now. Okay. Yeah, we could go in so many different directions here. I see, well, duality does exist, right? Duality does exist. And especially in this dimension, there is light and dark. There is joy and pain. And we can't know one without the other because that is the human experience. Now, I do see energies that are not of the light. That is something that I experience, and that is something that I see. So from that perspective, I would hypothesize, because again, the more I know, or the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. We could never know the vastness of the cosmos. It's not possible for these little human minds. So I'll just speak from my experience and my perspective. I do see that which is not of the light. And the main thing that I want to drive home here is that we are here at the turning point in history on the planet, and what's happening right now is to reclaim our sovereignty and to remember that we are light and that we can stand in our own power and that we are more powerful than we have been conditioned to believe.
Yes.
So all of that to say, yes, there is dark and there is light. I don't know that I would label evil just because of the baggage that's attached to that, but different people have different agendas and different energies have different agendas.
How can we elevate our energy to a higher conscious energy that serves us?
First thing that I teach is energetic hygiene, meaning heightening your awareness and looking at really becoming the witness of your own experience. So in my methodology, in the way that I operate and the way that I teach, is really healing as the foundation, self-healing. Because again, if we are light bodies. I see people's light bodies, and we are moving more towards our light bodies away from this physical, dense reality as the planet evolves and descends. So the way to elevate, kind of raise your vibration and tune into your energy is to, one, become really aware. What patterns are operating in your life? What belief systems do you hold? What do you actually believe? What are you carrying? What wounds, what traumas, what emotions? And being really aware of that and beginning to do that healing and clear some of that out and get to know the different aspects of yourself, your inner child, your ego, your higher self. And the more you get to know those, the more you can clear that out from your field, which is releasing those denser, those lower vibrations. As you do that, you're clearing your channel and you can call more of your light back in. Now, as we heal and clear our channel, we're naturally raising our vibration because, again, we are shedding and transmuting that lower, that denser energy, the trauma, the pain. And as we do that, we raise our vibration and we can tune into our intuitive senses in a more heightened way because our channel is clearer. Our bodies are designed, I mean, my gosh, it is unfathomable how finely tuned of a machine these human suits are. I mean, we have amazing technology in our bodies and we just have forgotten how to use the vast majority of it. So that's where the intuitive development comes in, is learning how to pick up on this subtle energy with your other senses and use that to continue to heighten your awareness.
What does your energy work process look like when you work with a potential client? If you could elaborate in brief.
It's shifted a lot. I do less direct healing. That's not true. I guide people through their own experience. So I'm not a believer in lay down on the table and I'm gonna just do energy work and move stuff around. I have found that it's just not sufficient or efficient. That would be the equivalent of going to a chiropractor once and expecting to never have to go back for adjustments. Like, you would have to do the work in between adjustments to strengthen the muscles and make sure that everything in your body is supporting that proper alignment. The same goes for energy work. So where when I started, I would kind of go in there and move things around, open certain chakras, release certain things. It's not sustainable, and it kind of does people a disservice by not teaching them how to do it themselves. So every session is different, but the foundation is I guide people through their own experience, and I kind of do energy work as I guide them through what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, and then I give them homework to continue so they can learn how to do it themselves.
And in that process, do you discuss things about the past?
Absolutely. So typically in a first session, I will just tune in and look through different lenses. So I'll say, all right, let me look at your emotional body, your mental body, your physical body, your energy body. Let me just see what we're working with here. And I'm very much an empath and clairvoyant. And one of my unique gifts is to be able to say, okay, I'm feeling something like density here. I'm feeling grief. And I'm seeing age 5 or 6 with a father figure. Like, what does that mean to you? And they're like, oh my gosh, XYZ, this is what happened. And I'm like, cool, that's what you're carrying in your body right there. Let's address that and start to work on healing it. So oftentimes that's inner child work. What did your inner child need at that time? And what need was not met? How can we give that to your inner child now and start moving some of this energy and rewriting the story that's been held in your subconscious, the story that your ego has told you about this event. And as we can go down to the root of it, everything in your life begins to shift because you're no longer holding that energy and you're no longer retelling that same story, the trauma story.
And at this point, do you still work on your energy level all the time?
Myself?
Yep.
Absolutely. There's no way that I could show up to the world in the way that I do if I'm my number one client. It would be so fraudulent of me to do what I do and teach what I teach if I wasn't working on myself regularly. It's my number one priority.
Could you walk us through some of the process that you perform on yourself, such as reading books or going in the nature, some sort of practices, if you can share with us?
Yeah, Nate. So the first thing I do every morning is my daily ritual, my morning practice, and it's grounding, clearing, and energetic boundaries. I do that in bed before I even get up, or I'll go on the patio and do it. Now, there's various ways to do that, and that's the first thing I do with all of my clients is help them establish a daily practice to tune into their energy. And then I spend a lot of time, as much time as possible in nature. It's so healing. It's so grounding. And it helps us to remember the vastness and the perfection and the cyclical nature. And I truly believe that the more in sync we are with nature, the more in sync we are with our natural rhythms. And the way that society has operated is not in tune with the natural rhythms. It's go, 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 go. There's no winter season where we retreat and take a break and sleep through winter. So yeah, connecting with nature is a big one.
So that's your morning energy routine, I should say.
Yeah, morning boundaries, energetic work. I do a lot of journaling. Writing is extremely powerful. So when I do my boundaries, and then when I get into meditation, sometimes I'll just meditate. Oftentimes I'm communicating, like I'm channeling, I'm talking to my guides, I'm working with my teams, or I'm going into the Akashic Records and, doing something there. But journaling is how I kind of get it out. So writing is a very powerful form of alchemy where we are turning intangible, subtle energy, ideas, thoughts, emotions into the physical form, which is what manifestation is. It's simply turning subtle energy, something not of form, into form. So writing is a huge component of my personal practices and what I do with clients as well.
Do you write some specific things on your journal, or it is just free flow?
Usually it's free flow. I've journaled really for at least 10 years. My whole life, but I have 10 years worth of journals in chronological order. So wow. I have my life story all journaled out. So it's how I process. I have a journal for emotional processing, and that's kind of my main journal. So when something's going on, I just start writing. Like, what am I feeling? What's going on? What am I thinking? And I just gain clarity that way because I can give it a voice. I have journals for the Akashic Records or for channeling when I'm working with, my guides and things like that.
And you mentioned about intuitive development. What's your intuitive gift?
So many. I don't even know how to. Okay, so let's back up. We are all intuitive. We are all intuitive. It's the way that our bodies are designed. It's the way that we are wired. Now, some people have honed this skill over many, many lifetimes. So it might be quicker for us to remember when those abilities kind of become reactivated in us. So I like to say everybody's intuitive, but just like everybody could play basketball, not everybody's going to be a professional basketball player. I feel the same way with intuition. I believe everybody can tune into that and learn how to use it for our daily lives, and strongly encourage everybody to do that. But, kind of being a professional intuitive, if you will, not everybody's going to do that. Not everybody's meant for that. But my specific gifts are really emotional is one of them. Like I can almost effortlessly uproot emotional blockages and help rewrite the story, kind of like what I talked about earlier. So the deep healing. And then also I'm super clairvoyant. I'm a channel. I'm just a channel. So I don't really know how to compartmentalize that in specific gifts, but I'm very much a conduit for energy, whether that's giving a reading or kind of channeling this higher vibrational energy that'll help you elevate. I'm really just a channel.
Listening to an intuition is tough for a lot of people. Then how do you listen to your intuition?
I love that question. You dedicate awareness to tuning into it. Meditation. You have to quiet the mind. And that doesn't mean silence your thoughts. That's so unrealistic. It's just so unrealistic. We don't need to do that. The mind is doing what it knows how to do. But if we can be aware of the mind rather than identify with the thoughts, you can just witness the thoughts and then, okay, cool, let it go. Okay, cool, let it go. And then you'll begin to notice the difference between a mental thought or a fear or an ego story and an intuitive nudge. And that's the most common question I get is, how do I know if it's ego or intuition? They feel different. The energy is different. The texture is different. It feels different in your body. Typically, if it's fear or ego, it's going to be rushed. It's going to be hurried. And it's going to feel almost reactive. Like, oh, I have to do this now. Or what if it's unsettled? Whereas intuition is softer. It's smoother. It's more of a whisper. It's more grounded. And it might trigger fear because the intuition is often illogical. It just works in a different fashion. So if you're getting kind of this intuitive, I don't know, I just keep having this thought of maybe I should leave my job or kind of look for something else. And then your reaction or response to that is, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to do that. I have to stay here. They feel very different. They come through very different. So again, it comes back to awareness. And meditation is one of the best ways to heighten your awareness. And let's talk meditation for a second, because that does not have to be sitting on the floor on a pillow in silence. My meditation is oftentimes hiking, walking. For some people, it's swimming. Whatever that is that lets you get in your flow state. Dancing. Or it could just be
Painting.
Sitting still. Yoga, painting, exactly. Anything that allows you to get into flow state with yourself is a meditation.
And this is my favorite topic. So since we are talking about meditation, and there are different forms of meditation, and one of them is transcendental meditation. In that meditation, we repeat one mantra over and over. So if meditation is difficult for somebody, you can listen to the same song over and over on repeat. It becomes meditation. There is one high performance athlete, I don't remember her name, and she does that. This is a meditation for her when she runs miles and miles. Then she listens to the same music or same song or same thing over and over. Then you get into that meditative zone, actually. And intuition.
I've never considered that.
Yeah, this is a great practice. And walking in the nature. And when we walk in the nature, when we sit in silence, then we allow ourselves to listen to that intuition. I love what you mentioned, that we all have it. Some are good at it, some are not so good at it. It's just when we allow ourselves to listen to that. And how we can listen? When we create some white noise or white space in our day-to-day schedule. And nature walking. And I see this a lot of time when people walk in the nature, they have earphones or listening to some music. I used to judge them in the past. Then, we are in the nature, let's enjoy this time without... let me ask you this. Do you listen to some music when you go for hiking or when you're in the nature?
No, that totally resonates with me because I hear that judgmental voice come in sometimes too. And I'm like, don't you hear the birds? But then sometimes I'll listen to, every now and then I'll listen to a podcast or an audiobook if I feel like I am wanting to kind of combine them and take in some information or learning or teaching or something like that. For the most part, I want to cut off the stimulus. I'm so overstimulated as is. The world at large is overstimulated, which is why it's so hard for a lot of us to tune into our intuition, because there's so much stimulus.
And listening to intuition is going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. It's not a rush decision to listen to that.
No, it's not. And it's really just learning how to let it come in. It's there all the time, but it's a muscle. And the more you flex it, the stronger it gets. The more you follow it, the louder it gets. Most people who are having trouble developing their intuition struggle because they're afraid to listen to it because it doesn't make logical sense. And it's kind of one of those, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You have to listen to it and follow it in order to trust it. And the more you do that, the louder it will get. So it's just a kind of recognizing and being still or quiet enough to start to tune in.
Should we trust our intuition all the time?
Always. Always. I'm not a black and white person. There's an infinite number of shades of gray. So I rarely say always or never. But as far as intuition is concerned, it will not lead you astray. That is the inner guidance system. It is our GPS. It is what tells us, okay, go left. You might not see the map or the blueprint that we're operating on right now, but I do. Go left. Wait, but everything is telling me to go right. Right makes sense. Right feels safer because everybody else is going right. Yeah, but I'm telling you to go left. That's the intuition.
Intuition always tells us the opposite of what everybody is doing and saying. Intuition, I feel this way all the time. Intuition is at the bottom of our soul, and there are so many layers, so much conditioning, so much beliefs, this noise, society, so many things on top of that. So if we want to listen to that intuition, we have to peel off some layers. We have to be aware of that process.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned about spending time in the silence, going for a nature walk. Is there any other practice you can suggest for our listeners?
As far as meditation or developing intuition?
Developing intuition or meditation as well.
Let's see. What are the practices that I commonly prescribe? Oh, I've gotten so used to customizing rituals for people. Now I'm trying to think of ones that are generally applicable.
It could be more than one.
Yeah, really getting in your body. There's a very big difference between knowledge and embodiment. You can read 10,000 books, but if it doesn't sink into your body, if you don't put it into practice, you haven't embodied it. And so I think that's what I see a lot of people do is I'm reading this book and listening to this podcast, and it really just becomes another mind thing, is I'm going to learn, absorb in the mind. And it just gets stuck there because it doesn't sink in deeper into our cells. It doesn't become that inner knowing, that embodiment. So getting in your body and opening up your body and allowing energy to come into your body, moving what's in your body. Yoga is a great practice. Ecstatic dance is a great practice. That's a part of my morning practice. You know, when I'm doing my thing is I'll start doing neck rolls and then body rolls. And I do a lot of free movement, and I do it in nature, and I probably look like a crazy person, and I have stopped caring about that because it's amazing. It's so helpful. So just anything that allows your body to very fluidly move, intuitive movement. There we go. Intuitive movement is really, really beneficial because your mind doesn't have to know what's going on, and it helps you to trust your own body and to trust that movement. There's
always two voices in our head. One is coming from ego and second is coming from intuition, most likely. And understanding which one is right is always a challenge for me and for a lot of people. So how can we understand, how can we follow the right path?
Well, as far as following the right path, there is no right path. There's an infinite number of possibilities, and free will is a very real thing. We can choose whatever we want to choose. And sometimes we go through decades of choosing the harder path because that's what's teaching us lessons. And there is an easier path, but we're not tuning in or we're not listening to that guidance. So we're still choosing this more tumultuous uphill type of path. So there, right or wrong, in my opinion, doesn't exist. As far as the path of least resistance, that will always come from your intuition. And again, I rarely use the word always. This is probably the one time I do. And the way that you tune in and understand which is which, get into your body. They feel different in your body. So when somebody comes to me and says, okay, I feel like I want to do this, but I'm also hearing this, which is which? I stop and we feel into the energy of each. So here's one thing you can do. Sit in meditation, or you can stand, ask your body what it wants to do, and kind of clear the slate. You can imagine looking at a whiteboard and just clearing the whiteboard, or you can imagine just a wave of water coming over you, just kind of cleaning it all. And then call in the idea of one of the two that you're kind of debating between. Because one is probably your mind or your ego, and the other is probably your intuition. So call in one of them. Sit in it. How does it feel in your body? Does your body clench? Or do you feel a certain, your head or your stomach? What do you notice? And then wipe the slate clean again and call in the other one. How does it feel in your body? Typically, the intuition will feel a lot lighter. It might trigger fear because it's like, oh man, I know this is right, but that terrifies me. Just tune, and that's normal, but tune into your body and sit with the energy of the idea of it. And if you do that and you apply these mindfulness practices, this awareness, you'll know. It might not be what you want to hear because it's scary, but you'll know.
Yes.
Oh,
Listening
and
to
body
intuition.
testing. Sorry, one more. Body testing. I do that with supplements a lot. So you can stand up and I put my hands on my heart space and I ask, is this for my highest good? And if it's a yes, my body will kind of sway forward. And if it's a no, my body will kind of sway back. You can also do it I think it's called a ring test, but you hold your fingers together and then it's hard to explain. If it's a yes, it'll remain intact. If it's a no, it'll kind of open up but I don't do it that way. I like to just let my body kind of be a pendulum.
Your program is coming called Soul Evolution in few weeks. Could you elaborate on that program, Soul Evolution program?
Yes, I'm so excited about it. It is a mix of healing and intuitive development, which is basically everything we've talked about today, because that is how we ascend. That is how we raise our vibration. So it's 3 modules. It's 10 weeks of live calls together. And we're going to go through the different dimensions of ourselves. We're going to learn how to work with our inner child. We're going to learn how to work with our ego. And we're going to have soul journeys that will help us do that everyone will have access to forever going forward, because healing is ongoing. And then we're going to learn, how do you receive intuitive information? You personally. So yes, how we generally do, but how are you receiving that? And then the 3rd module is starting to learn your intuitive language. How do you interpret what it is that you're receiving? What does that mean? And learning how to look through different lenses. So it's really a combination of healing and intuitive development that will build a very solid foundation that you can continue to access going forward. So when after the 10 weeks, you have a fight with your significant other and you're like, oh my gosh, what's coming up? I feel like I just threw a temper tantrum. Let me go do this soul journey to check in with my inner child and figure out what's going on. You will have access to that.
Do you recommend some books in the world of intuition development, soul healing, and energy work, or any book that impacts you the most?
I get that question a lot. For intuitive development, unfortunately, I really don't have many books because my methodology is really based on my own experience. Carolyn Myss, MYSS, is an author that I respect, and she has written on, I think, Anatomy of the Spirit. She's written on the chakras. She comes from a religious background. Dr. Joe Dispenza is great. That's more from a scientific lens. What else? Actually, I'm going to walk to my bookshelf right now. Yeah, I don't really have many on intuitive development. Yeah, most of mine are on other subjects, not necessarily intuitive development.
Yeah, any other book that can positively impact or create awareness in our life.
One of my favorite books is, oh my gosh, now that I say that, I can't think of the name. The Alchemist. I love The Alchemist. Eckhart Tolle is one of my favorite authors. I respect the heck out of him. The Power of Now is a really powerful book. Let's see what else.
Actually, I have, this book, The Power of Now. Almost all of my guests have recommended this book. And I think last year, I was just skipping through this book in a library. And it didn't resonate with me last year. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And it's a very highly recommended book.
It's funny. I actually have both The Power of Now and The Power of Positive Thinking. I have had for 5-10 years. And I recently went back and kind of flipped through and just read a couple things that I highlighted. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is profound. It's like I had forgotten about it because I read it so long ago. But yeah, so the Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. For empaths, anybody who resonates with the term empath, or you feel sensitive to energy, or you're really aware of that, you're kind of becoming aware, oh wait, I might need energetic boundaries. Like, what am I experiencing here? Judith Orloff is a great author. She's a clinical psychologist and an empath, and she teaches this stuff. So she has some books. The Empath Survival Guide is a good one for empaths, kind of tuning into energy.
They are amazing books. They are very deep books, and these are the books that we want to revisit multiple times in our lifetime. They are not just one time read and throw away. They are multiple times readings.
Absolutely.
And I would like to shift some gears over here.
Okay.
And it is a very serious question. Was there any time in your life when you had to work on your self-healing really bad, when you realized that you have had enough and you want to take some massive action on healing yourself?
Constantly. It's never ending. Now, I go through ebbs and flows, and we all do, but the first big one was, like I said, 10 years ago with an eating disorder. And then ever since then, it's just peeling back all the layers, and things will be going great. And then something will be triggered. I'm like, okay, here we go again. I'm diving in. What's here? So yeah, it's constant. And it's really a matter of meeting it with curiosity rather than, damn it, and now this is coming up. I don't want to do this, which happens too. Don't get me wrong. But the more that we can meet healing with the curiosity of a child and almost like a detective, like, ooh, what's here? This is how interesting. What is this? What's playing out in my life? How interesting. That phrase, how interesting, has stuck with me through all of my healing.
And sometimes what happens is when we are in a conversation with somebody, or when we meet somebody in person, that there is something missing, and we say that something is missing energetically. Is it because of our own stuff, or is it really something missing in that conversation? Or can you elaborate more on that? Because I ask this to myself all the time, and sometimes we feel amazing. Wow, the energy is amazing. Energy is so positive,
What do you mean by something missing? Like something's just not lining up?
Yeah, exactly. Or something is not connecting the dots.
Yeah, I see that as just not an energetic match. Now, we'll go to some fundamental energy for a second to kind of set the stage. Everything is energy. We learned that in science class growing up. Energy moves, right? Energy is just information that moves, and it moves in vibration. Frequency is the rate at which energy vibrates. So when we resonate with each other, we use that term a lot. Oh, that really resonates with me. That term relates to resonant vibration. It means you are vibrating at a similar wavelength. Whereas, that does not resonate with me. That doesn't sit well. Like something's missing here. Like you said, it just doesn't resonate. They're different vibrations. One might be really high, one might be really low, or they might just be on different wavelengths completely. It really all comes down to vibration. So I always say it's not personal, it's vibrational. And it's true. It's not personal, it's vibrational. Yeah. And that I use that a lot when it comes to relationships, because it's really easy to be like, oh, we were such good friends and now he never calls me anymore and I'm offended. It's like, no, it's not personal. It's just vibrational. You're just not resonating anymore. And that's perfectly fine.
I'm going to buy this term, and instead of saying I'm not taking it personally, I will say I'm not taking it vibrationally.
Yeah, it's not personal, it's vibrational. Like, you vibrate where you are and I'm going to vibrate where I am. And if they're aligned, they're going to come together. It is the law. If not, they will not. It's totally fine.
And I'm sure this conversation regarding energy work, soul healing, intuitive development will open a lot of doors of awareness for our listeners and for
I hope so.
a lot of people. And before I ask you my last question, I want to ask you, what is your soul calling?
My soul calling is to follow what lights me up. And that's everybody's soul calling. And by following what lights us up, by following our joy, our path will inevitably unfold. So as I've done that and as I continue to do that, I see more and more that another aspect of my soul calling is to really help people through their awakening with their ascension process, their healing process, and give them a foundation to move from an old way of being to a new way of being as we go through this planetary shift as a globe of ascending. So I'm an ascension guide.
I love it. I love the term. I love everything what you just mentioned. And where can our listeners find you online?
Instagram is wonderful. It's at Zaia Soul, Zaia. I also have a private Facebook group that I do live Akashic readings. I do live healings and Q&A, and that's Zaia Soul Space. And then my website is ZaiaSoul.com. So those are the best ways. And all of my offerings are there. You're welcome to email me from the site. I check my DMs on Instagram as well. So I would love to connect.
Thank you. And I will put all the information in the show notes, and our listeners can definitely get in touch with you.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Jessica. It was an amazing conversation.
Yes, I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode today. I hope you learned from this episode that you can apply in your life. If you did enjoy this, please subscribe to the podcast, The Nishant Garg Show, on Apple Podcast. You can also subscribe to the show through my website, https://nishantgarg.me, NISHANTGARG.me. You can also share this podcast with your family and friends or whoever want to feel fulfilled. And thank you so much again.